The most important kind of triangle for us to be able to recognize in this geometry class is called an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has two sides that are congruent, meaning they are the same length, and has two angles. This is the symbol for angle. Two angles that are congruent, meaning that they have the same number of degrees. So this isosceles triangle that I drew, I know that it's isosceles because it has two angles that are congruent, 65 degrees and 65 degrees. The third angle is 50 degrees. Then from there, it has two congruent sides. These two sides are each 5.13 inches. And then this side is smaller. It's across from the smaller angle, 4.38 inches. So the thing that will be tricky for you to recognize in isosceles triangles is which sides and which angles go together. So what you need to do is, if they tell you that two angles are congruent, then you're going to take those congruent angles and you're going to go across the triangle. And when you go across the triangle, the two sides that you land on, those will be the congruent sides. And if you mark those sides the same way, that shows that you know that they're congruent. On the other hand, if they tell you that the two sides are congruent, you can go from the side across to the angle, from the side across to the angle, and mark that those angles are congruent. We'll show one more example real quick. So suppose that they gave you triangle ABC and they told you that side AB is congruent to side BC. You would then mark side AB and side BC the same way to show that you know that those are the same length. Then from there, to figure out which angles are congruent to each other, you would go across from that side to the angle opposite. And from this side across to the angle opposite. So that would mean that angle BAC right here is congruent to angle BCA. And that's the reason that you've marked these angles in the same way, to show that you know that they're congruent. Finally, let's imagine that they told you that you know that angle A is 45 degrees. And they said, what is the measure of angle ABC? Okay, well, they told you two things. One thing they told you is that AB is congruent to BC. So you can go across and mark the angles that are opposite them. Congruent. Then if you know that this angle is 45, then you can copy this because they're the same degree measure. They're congruent. So you know this angle is also 45 degrees. Then you have the third angle that you don't know. We'll just call it angle B. It's really angle ABC, but we'll just call it angle B. And you know that the total number of degrees in a triangle is going to be something plus something plus something equals 180. So you can say angle A plus angle B plus angle C equals 180. And substitute, because you know angle A is 45. And angle C is also 45. So 45 plus B plus 45 equals 180. Combine like terms, 45 plus 45 is 90. So 90 plus B equals 180. Now subtract from both sides and get that B equals 180 minus 90. So B is 90 degrees. So remember, isosceles triangles have two angles that are congruent and two sides that are congruent. The congruent angles and the congruent sides will be opposite each other. So like in this tiny little triangle, if they tell you that these angles are congruent, you can go across from the angle to the side and across from the angle to the side and mark those congruent as well. Looks like a little Sonic the Hedgehog going or something.